Welcome to the Directing Animation Livecast with Scott Weiser, who has gone from a studio of one to directing at Spacestation Animation to supervising at Steamroller Animation, continuously developing over 15 feature film pitches on a quest to master the art of making deeply meaningful animated films. Today our guests are the wonderful Ben Rische and Josh Carroll. I want to give a little bit of an intro. So in my first job in the animation industry, I broke in really quickly into the animation industry, and then I went through about 18 months of unemployment. I went through 2 more years of underemployment, but at that job with underemployment, I was actually kind of able to create anything I wanted to. So I was out there looking for inspiration, and this video, a brand video for a studio, came up, and it had the coolest animation in it. I just loved it. It just was very black and white and wonderful. And I would watch that thing over and over and over again. And it inspired me. I wanted to create something like it. And I had several things lined up, different styles I wanted to try. And I never got to try that one. But when I got here to Steamroller Studios, I was talking to Ben Rische and found out that he worked on it. And that both of you, I think you got your starts at Brazen, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. And they're a wonderful studio, having lots of great success. And we're actually going to have Brian Ingram on the live cast in April, so that's going to be wonderful. We'll get to talk more about that project there. And we're not going to go to any specifics on any projects or processes in here. We're going to talk more, just about art and our different approaches to life and our philosophies behind filmmaking and art making and storytelling. So, yeah. A little bit about Josh Carroll. You come more from the modeling end of things. You're a great digital sculptor. You also have a great eye for anything in animation, I've noticed in our meetings. And Ben started as an animator, but wanted to be more in visual development and still does some 2D animation and is the head of story at Steamroller Animation. So you have very unconventional pathways into the animation industry. And if you want to speak to that, I'd love to hear more about that. And let's just get this conversation started.
Sure. You want to start first, Ben?
Sure. Yeah, I can start. Yeah, so as you said, I started out as a 2D and CG animator. So I don't know how much we want to go into our backstories as far as where we came from, but
say it all, bro.
So I started out, I've been drawing since I was a kid. I've been drawing since I can remember. And I got serious into drawing a lot more when I was in middle school with one of my best friends in middle school. We started coming up with video game ideas because we were watching anime and different things like that. And we love video games. And so we started kind of coming up with stuff. And so that's when I really kind of started to take it a little bit more seriously. And back then, you had books and there was no YouTube. So it was just me trying to figure that out as I went and copying different artists that I liked and things like that. And went into school, high school. I thought I was going to go into art. My art teacher in high school kind of shot me down because I would draw Final Fantasy characters and stuff. And she was like, "You're never going to get a job doing that." So I got upset. And I was like,
you showed her.
This might not a thing. Yeah, so, she wanted me to be a fine artist more. I think that was the intent. And so I was going to actually go into teaching. I wanted to potentially be a doctor, but I didn't want to go to 12 years of school. So I didn't do that. And I was going to go into teaching. But then my best friend, the one that we did the video game designs with way back in middle school, we were friends all through first grade through high school. And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to the Art Institute and I'm going to go into the video game design stuff in San Diego." And I was like, "Bro, you can't draw. Like, you're going to the Art Institute and you got accepted? I got to go there." And so went there, signed my life away to Art Institute. And I was there for a year and a half. And I was going into concept art. And I had an animation class, a 2D animation class I had to take. And the first animation I made, I fell in love with it. I did a bouncing ball and I was like, I loved it. It was amazing. And we did old flip with paper and all that. And yeah, I was just like enamored with it. So I changed my major that day and I was like, I'm going to be an animator. And so my mom was a art teacher. Well, she was a teacher, but she taught the art curriculum at a charter school in San Diego. And she met a guy named Terry Naughton. Um, and he was a cleanup artist at Disney for 20 years. And so we got in touch and he introduced me. We went to a Christmas party up in LA for all the old 2D guys. And he introduced me to his supervisor at Disney named Alex Topetti. And Alex and I had a really great conversation that night that I met him, and he told me to quit school and to move up to his house in LA, and he'd teach me everything he knew. And he had worked with the Nine Old Men and all that stuff. And so I was like, that's awesome. I just met you. I'll think about it. And so I went back to school in San Diego. I asked one of my teachers if I should leave, and he's like, yeah, I think you should. And so I quit school. Was going to go to Cal Arts, missed my window, was going to have to pay back all my crazy loans. So I ended up going to the Academy of Art for a semester up in San Francisco. I was running out of money. And so I basically quit there as well, because I had to start over basically, and moved down to LA with my mentor, with Alex. And he taught me all the 2D stuff, taught me how to clean up traditionally and all that stuff. And I was going to animation mentor after that. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to get into 2D because there just wasn't the market for it. So I was like, I got to be a CG animator.
So you thought.
And so, yeah. And so I went in there for that. And then that's where I met Brian Ingram, and he was my mentor, and he helped me through all throughout Animation Mentor. He was there next to me and helping me out and giving me feedback, and it was awesome. And we stayed in touch. He was working on a short at the time, and I was helping him out with it. And then I got a job at Blue Sky out of Class 4 with Nick Bruno. So
nice.
Went there and was there for a bit working on Epic, and came back home after that. And I was waiting for them to call me basically. And Brian called me up and was like, hey, I'm going to be joining Greengrass Studios and going to be helping them to kind of with their animation content and kind of being the CEO of the studio. Would you like to be my, one of the first animators to come on? I really enjoy your stuff and I enjoy working with you. And so, yeah. And then I went on, I was like, what does it mean? Do I get to like, what do I get to do? And he's like, you get to do whatever you want. You can use your skills in 2D, you can in CG, we're going to need character design, all these things. So it was that. And that week, actually, Blue Sky called me back to come back on Rio too. So I had to choose in between them. So I chose Brazen, and that's where I really was able to grow into the artist I am today, because they allowed me to be able to really explore the different skills that I was able to kind of try out. So
yeah,
storyboarding was one of them. But it didn't happen until like 4 years into me working there, 3 or 4 years working there. And I I did storyboarding, and I loved it. And it was like, wow, this is like everything put together.
Yes, it is. It really is. It's so much to think about when you're planning out storyboards.
Well, it's just amazing. I mean, it's like you're an animator kind of, because you're doing keys and you have to think about the shots. And so I fell in love with it, and I haven't looked back. So I never could do CG all the way because I always wanted to draw again. And so CG was always just too cramped for me. I would always fight the rig, and I would always be like, I can draw this faster. And my whole CG workflow was always doing 2D tests anyways beforehand. And I'd always get frustrated. And then I'd always need chocolate halfway through going through my splining, because my brain would just be fried. And so... Yeah. But
I really relate to that. And I learned CG first, but anytime I could get a chance to like do this little 2D thing, I was like, I'm going to do this little 2D thing. And it was funny because actually there was like 4 or 5 years that's all I did was 2D stuff. I only did one CG project in freelance. And so, yeah, 2D is a useful skill. It's definitely, it's a wonderful place to be.
That's what I always tell everyone. I mean, that's what Alex told me when I talked to him. I said, what's the one skill that I need to have? And he was like, draw every single day of your life for the rest of your life. He's like, you'll never regret having that skill. Yeah. And I thank him for that, because I don't regret having that skill, because literally once you know how to draw, I mean, it opens up so many more doors, you know, for the rest of the industry, because, you know, you can do story, you can do character design, you can do background design, you can do layout, you can do CG, 2D. I mean, you can do everything in a certain way. I still want to be a painter at some point. I still want to paint at some point, but that's going to be on the back burner.
Gotta have
Maybe
those
when
goals,
I retire.
Modeling is one thing I wish I could do that anytime I kind of get near it, I'm like, no. I even I designed a cartoon version of the CG mascot at Weber State in one of my freelance things. And yeah, or it was during that period where I saw the work you'd done there on the branding video. And others, I know others contributed to it. It wasn't just you. But yeah, I did sculpt it out of clay, and that was fun. But digital sculpting, it just seems so...
Acquired taste, bro.
It is an acquired taste, and I love looking at it. Like, I love your portfolio. When I first opened it, Josh, it was just incredible. I was like, wow.
Thank you.
I'd love this guy to sculpt one of my characters, but I can't afford you.
Hey, one day.
One day. One day. Yep.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, as for me, like I think you know, Ben and I have a lot in common in terms of sort of the road less traveled. My career began actually in graphic design. I went to school at LSU and graduated with a degree in graphic design. Worked there for just over 3 years. And as I was kind of going through that process, I kind of realized that something deep within me was still looking for a more narrative outlet. Like, I loved the application and the art of graphic design, but there was something still missing there, you know, this sort of narrative quality, the story centricness. So I kind of had a conversation with my wife, and I was like, hey, I actually think, you know the conversation, hey, I think I need to change my career, right? So, you know, we sit down, you know, we're Christians, and so we sat down and we really prayed about, like, okay, what is the path forward for me in my career? And we felt like God was leading me to really kind of go back to school. So I enrolled at Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota, and went through their degree program in computer animation. And in the process, got an amazing opportunity to go out to Disney and intern as one of their modeling interns. Very early on, I kind of realized that I'm not an animator. I love the art of animation and absolutely respect the artists who do it. But I'm not a performer myself. I'm not. And so for me, modeling was sort of the avenue into tapping into the character, right? Really kind of getting into bringing the character to life. And that was really kind of how I broke into the industry. I did my internship out at Disney in LA, came back to school and finished my last year. And then my wife and I both moved out to LA with sort of the expectation that I would actually get hired on at Disney at that point. That kind of didn't work out as things tend to happen, you know.
Yep.
And I was out in LA looking for work, and all of a sudden, just like Ben, I got a call from Brian Ingram as well, and he said, "Hey, I got your name from one of your professors at Ringling, who's a good friend of mine. He's like, I'm starting up a studio in Dallas. Are you interested in coming out and being part of it?" And that really kind of just, you know, launched everything. I feel like, again, with much prayerful consideration, we decided to move back to Dallas. And from that point forward, it was just an amazing opportunity at Brazen to really kind of get in, like Ben was saying, and just apply everything I had in me as an artist, right? And one thing I'm extremely grateful for about that opportunity is it really gave me a platform to maneuver through different aspects of my career. You know, I started as a modeler there, got some great experience doing that, and really enjoyed it. But as time went on, you know, Brian kind of acknowledged in me, like, hey, it seems like you have, you know, sort of a creative voice in you that, you know, I'd love to give you the opportunity to exercise. And so really kind of under his wing, he really trained me up in sort of creative director and directorial roles. And, you know, really kind of gave me a stepping stone to be able to kind of move into creative leadership on projects. And that was awesome. And so really it kind of brought me to where I am today. You know, I still kind of cling on to my modeling past some and still do that a little bit, but really now at Steamroller, I am, you know, working in a creative directorial role. and I'm loving it. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's wonderful. They're inspiring stories too. I love them, relate to them. I can't tell you how many times I would sit down with my wife and like, should I really be doing animation? And we'd have a very heart-to-heart conversation and, pray about it and determine, okay, we're in the right path. And sometimes we had to make slight adjustments, but it's also very fascinating how those wrong turns actually are the right turns,
Absolutely.
We discussed this yesterday, how, sometimes these blessings come disguised as a trial, It looks like it's like this really hard thing, but suddenly it's like, oh wow, who knew that great thing would come out of this, And that's wonderful.
Yeah, and just that the perseverance to really kind of maneuver through those moments. You really get on the outside and look back and be like, whoa, I never would have chosen the path that it took, right? But I never would have arrived at where I'm at had I not gone the way it went, right? And I mean, even Ben and I, as sort of as a friendship and a creative partnership and a relationship started because of that, right? Like we both, we both started up raising together, and at that point we were just peers and just like, hey, guy that I saw at work every day, that was just cool to talk to, right? And that really kind of grew into really a brotherhood, right? A lifelong relationship, a friendship, and the opportunities that we get to work together have just really kind of meant everything to me. So even as you're kind of maneuvering through your career and kind of bumping elbows with people, you never know, the people that are going to just change the course of your life forever, right? So that's been really kind of awesome to see how that's kind of been woven through our story,
Yeah. And you didn't even come to Steamroller at the same time. It's just that bond, eventually brought you here to where you are, and you've been able to grow into these roles, which are awesome. And it's really inspiring to work alongside you. I'll quietly be listening to meetings sometimes and just hearing your insights, Josh. It's just like, oh yeah. I like that a lot. Man. And on my work, you've given some great insights on my work too, and I really enjoy it.
You do great work, man. So it's easy to do. You know what I'm saying?
Thanks.
It's been, Steamroller has really kind of offered an amazing kind of sort of step forward for me where, for those who may not be aware, the studio is really kind of working on sort of our flagship IP. And my role as I've kind of come in has sort of been largely shepherding that. So as a head of creative, I'm pretty much overseeing the creative directors that we have at the studio, and myself sort of functioning as creative director on Spice Frontier, which is our initial IP. Jalil Sadool, our COO, is the creator of the property and the director on the project. And I really kind of work under him very closely, kind of shepherding the day-to-day creative ins and outs of the project, really work closely with the team, the production team, and really kind of just guide that process along. So it's been really awesome to get to serve in that role. Ben was, has been on the project with us as well. And, was the sort of initial story artist on the project, and, getting to kind of really interact with the amazing talent that we have and the awesome people on the team, to see work like yours, Scott, to see work like yours, Ben. This was really cool to kind of be sort of at the head of all that and kind of looking at it all and saying, wow, we have something really special here. And the people that we sort of gathered to work on this project has been really impressive and really kind of has blown me away with just their capabilities and their artistry. And it's just been really cool.
Yeah.
It's been cool to see the studio grow as well. Because I've been at Steamroller for about 4 years now, 4 years in April next year. And when I came on, obviously I came on saying I can do CG and 2D stuff, but also saying I kind of wanted to focus on story. So Jalil kind of brought me on as the first story guy at the studio that they had hired ever, because they mostly did animation work before that. So we had a small team of artists on Deadwood, on the game that they came out with. And so I got to talk to some of those guys, but that was pretty much the art department, or the pre-production side of it all, was just, a couple guys that were doing that. And then we have some modelers on that game as well. And so it was really interesting to see. And they came out with the short for Spice Frontier a few months after I came on. I didn't work on it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And the stuff that they did in it was incredible for the team that they had. And then, I started working with Jalil on what we're working on now, and just seeing the team grow, having Josh come on. I mean, I can say that I kind of helped convince him too. I know Jalil
It's
was the
very
one
true.
that ultimately did it. I couldn't believe that he came out of the woodworks, for it, but because Josh had kind of taken a hiatus. So but yeah, it's just been really cool to see how all of that coming together has really been led, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see what we do with the team and with the workflow that we're doing with Unreal and everything like that. I mean, there's so many new horizons that we're testing out that I've never seen before in my career, that just gives a lot of opportunities for new workflows and new things. And I love workflows. So I always enjoy learning something new and stuff like that, as long as AI doesn't take over my job. So cool.
Sure. Yeah. I get that. That's quite a sentiment. We actually, our last episode was AI good or evil, and it was a debate that we had with several business owners and different creatives within the industry in Utah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a cool conversation.
Cool.
It was really fun. And so hearing these different stories is really awesome too, just how they all connect. Like as you're speaking, because I've known about Steamroller since the beginning as well. I was invited about 7-8 years ago to come. But it was funny. Jalil introduced me as, that's the guy who turned me down at one point. I was like, well, not really. And then I saw Spy's Frontier and I was like, oh yeah, I could have worked on that maybe, But, every time I would look at it, I'd be like, yeah, that's great. But I feel like I'm on the right path, currently. I'm so grateful it collided. It's just such a wonderful place. It was built by artists for artists to service the industry. Yeah. And therefore, it's just a great place to learn and grow. It's just fantastic. And it's people are catching on to that too. We're getting it, yeah.
Very much so. And, I would say this, like, as we kind of talk about opportunities that we've had and platforms that we've had, I feel like Steamroller has been an amazing, again, like an incubator for me as an individual, as an artist, as a leader. I feel like the environment itself is just so nurturing. But then on top of that, the people that you interact with every day are always looking to push you forward, right? Seeing how can we help you? How can we maximize your abilities and your talents? And then how can we trust you with an opportunity to shine, right? And I feel like that's been sort of an eye-opening experience for me to just like step in. And Jalil, he's tenacious. Ben, I'll give you credit. You definitely introduced me to the idea, but he definitely convinced me to come on board because we were going to try to do something special. And I was just amazed with the amount of trust that I was given. Like, hey, this is like our baby. This is our first big, offering to the world, our first big IP project that we're going to put out there, and we want you to come in and have a major influence over it. And I can't say enough about how grateful I am for that trust, because I feel like it's meant all the difference. It's helped me to really kind of own the role, to have autonomy in the role, and to really kind of work within it, build the team up. And it's great because when you get that level of trust coming down from the top, you can then perpetuate that down below you, right? So the people that are working, with me, I can sort of continue that, give them opportunities to shine, and allow people to have the same platform I had, and continue to have. And it's just a really great, it's a great place to be, right? Where everyone is really kind of working towards the same goal of building up not only a project, but a place of belonging where we can all kind of coalesce into something more, right? Where the sum can be bigger than the parts, right?
Yeah.
So it's been pretty incredible, especially as early on in my career, I would say, as I am. I never expected to kind of arrive at a place where I can kind of exercise this much influence and really just kind of have as big of a footprint as I'm allowed to have at this point. And it's just been really cool.
Yeah. Listening to also, in terms of your leadership, the I've seen way too many people, when they think of leadership, they think of clutching it close. Like, I'm gaining so much power, and then I've got to keep that for me, right? And what you said about leadership was, I want to help other people be able to have these same types of opportunities, because that's what was afforded to you. And yeah, I love hearing that. That kind of a pattern is
Absolutely.
very healthy.
Well, and you hope, and you sort of rely on the fact that as you're choosing your team members, that you're vetting them to the point where they're the kind of people that you can entrust with that kind of, that kind of opportunity, right? And I've been extremely thankful to say that everyone that's come on board here has just been amazing, and it really has surpassed all of my expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as people of that caliber working around you, you just want to throw them stuff. You're like, hey, you have amazing artistic skills and your own voice, and I think one of the things I love about film and animation is that it's so collaborative that it ends up, again, kind of like we're talking about, the trajectory of the project always ends up in a place that you never could have foreseen as an individual, right?
Yeah.
Because all the individual voices that are coming into play huge roles into that. They put their own fingerprints on it. They push it in ways that, without those people there, without those voices in the room, we may never have gone, right?
Yeah.
And so you really kind of do your best to try to make sure that the people around you are as top notch as they can be in terms of character, in terms of artistic talent, in terms of just the kind of team members that you hope and want to be a part of, right? And when you find that you have those people around you, man, you feed them. It's like, hey, let me give you as many opportunities as I can, because I want to see more of what you've got. It's amazing. And I have been extremely pleased to have always been like my expectations have been surpassed over and over again. So, I feel like in a leadership position, I can't help but want to give those people more opportunities, because like everything they do is just like, okay, that's way better than I expected it to be. That's amazing. Here's another one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's your experience with leadership, Ben? Yeah.
I mean, the thing that I'll mention on top of that, Josh, is that I think that that's something that I really appreciate that we got from Brazen as well, is the autonomy. Because of the way that we worked there and how we had to really come up creatively with problem solving in certain situations, and with the fact that it was so early on, even with tutorials and things on YouTube. And I know for myself, it's like when I had to go into story, there was nothing online for it. It was just write-ups from the old days. But like Brian and the team gave me the opportunity to fail, and to be able to try things, and I look back and I look back at those boards, or even my old animations, it's like, dude, it's terrible. But the thing that I loved is that, Brian would always kind of throw me into the deep end, in a way, and in a good way, where it was like, I know what you can do. And I'm going to, and I know you have the autonomy, and you have you can do this. And so he believed in me in that way. And I can never thank him enough, and thank the team enough for that at Brazen, because that's really the biggest thing that I've brought here at Steamroller, is all the people on my team. I'm giving them opportunities to try things out, to, even opportunities to fail, and to learn from that, because that's what I don't want to control everything.
Yeah.
I don't want to have that. I don't want to have that job anyways. Like, I don't want to micromanage, because that's just not how I am as a person. And for me, my job as a leader is to be a servant to the people underneath me, and to help them grow in the same way that I saw people that led me in the past help me to grow, where it was like giving the opportunities, and to show me, to help push me past my boundaries, because I feel like I had so many, I would overthink things so much in my earlier career. And I would get nervous, and I would say, I can't do this. I can't get it done in time, and all these things, and every time. And honestly, I can't really say anything for myself that was me. I mean, honestly, I believe that, I'm a Christian as well. And I believe that, God kind of got me through all of that. And there were times where I pulled things out that I never thought I could, because he was there with me, in those things.
Yep.
So yeah, it just was, it was an incredible experience. And obviously Brazen, I grew a lot in my faith as well there, just because of them being a Christian studio as well. So yeah, so I'm hoping that I'm bringing that to the team, to my teams that I have underneath me, and that we can bring that to the studio more and more. And I think that that's what Josh is saying, is that there's a trust of being like, you know what, I trust you to go do that, and I trust you, even if you fail, you'll take the responsibility for it, and we'll just move forward from it, because we're all people, we're all humans, we're all gonna make mistakes, and we're all going to do things well, and we're all learning through this. If I've learned anything about studios as well in the past like 12, 13 years, is that like we all don't really know what we're doing all the way, and we're all figuring it out. And I feel like it's a humbling thing, because it doesn't make room for ego when it's like, hey, like with the IP we're on with Spice Frontier, this is a whole brand new thing. So it's like everyone coming on a team, it's like, guys, just so you know, none of this is figured out.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yep.
And it's okay we haven't figured it out, because this is a new frontier. We're trying.
Yep.
And it's funny, this is Spice Frontier.
A Spice Frontier.
It's like we are going into a new frontier. And,
yeah.
And Jalil would love the Star Trek reference. But it's like we are kind of stepping into a new kind of world with, real-time rendering and all these different things that can allow us to make things in ways that was never done before. So yeah, that's basically kind of overall what I think about it all.
Yeah, I love how you kept repeating the word autonomy. That is just such a beautiful word. It feels to me like the difference between feeling like you're a cog in a machine versus feeling like you're an artist, like you're bringing something to the table, right? And it's
Yes.
crazy, because I think the reason the work that you were all there were doing at that time, why it's so inspiring to me, is because that's what I had. I had autonomy. I didn't have the same type of resources to talent, because I was at a university that they had no idea what I was doing. I had already completed all the work they had for me in like a month. They thought, oh, this is like 6 months of work, and I completed it, right? So like, okay, do something for you. And so I was like, okay, I'd pitch an idea and they'd let me do it. I had plenty of autonomy, but yeah, being able to see your work was super inspiring at that point, and continues to be inspiring, right? Like I can feel that influence that you're trying to give. And obviously, Steamroller Studios is a place where people from all walks of life, all different faiths or belief systems, there's no requirement there, obviously, but it's wonderful how everybody gets along so well, and that's wonderful as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, creative collaboration is everything, right? It's inviting people to sort of input, their experience, their path, their worldviews, their insights, Lord, and kind of like bringing all that stuff together and sort of seeing how it sort of enhances the whole has just been really great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, so as we said in the down in the description, you've worked together for many years. You work together day in, day out. Probably a little bit less. You see each other a little bit less than you used to right now. But then after work, you're going and you're working on a project together.
That's right.
Let's speak to that.
That's right. So it's a again, the circuitous route of our career trajectory and the sort of art that we've been involved in and produced has sort of brought us to sort of a new horizon, where we decided we wanted to get together and collaborate and create a graphic novel. Both Ben and I, and feel free to chime in here, bro.
Novels.
Novels. Yeah, because it can't just be one, right? One thing we learned very early on is like controlling scope is very difficult for us. So it starts out as one small project and balloons into many. But we sort of came up both with a love of graphic art, of comics and graphic novels and manga and all that sort of thing. And one thing we learned very early on in the process of working in animation studios is just how labor intensive it is to make something animated, right? And to sort of Ben's description earlier, when we were working together at Brazen and even here at Steamroller, we had a lot of opportunity to really work very closely with one another, to learn each other's personalities, each other's skills, each other's capabilities artistically. And so as we kind of grew closer in that and decided we wanted to partner, we're like, okay, what can we create together that we can create together, right? That doesn't need a massive team behind it, that isn't going to require all sorts of skill sets that between the two of us we don't represent. And so then we kind of rediscover, like, as we're talking, like, hey, like, I've always loved comics, always wanted to get into creating a graphic novel or writing and producing something in that kind of narrative framework. And so, as we talked, you're like, okay, sweet, we're gonna do this between the two of us. We're gonna sit down and really kind of put our money where our mouth is and kind of get after it. So we have embarked on a project. We're keeping it hush hush for now, but it will be set in a fantasy world. We both have grown up with the love of fantasy, and have always wanted to really see that push more into the comics world. And so I'll be doing the majority of the writing, and Ben will be doing the majority of the art. And basically, our story is three outcasts that are forced to band together to fight the evil around them. One is a rogue priest. The other two are heirs to a mystical clan of mystical assassins. And even though they're sworn enemies, they have to kind of set their differences aside to unravel a dark conspiracy that threatens all the people they love. So that's kind of the premise of the story.
Wow, we even get a log line. I didn't know we were going to get that much today.
Yeah. I guess
that's the best log line we've done so far, bro.
Nice.
There you go. I gave you a little bit of a teaser,
Nice.
But yeah, so we're deep into volume 1. I say that with a little shame because this was supposed to be a small project for us, but as we got into it, we just found that the story at some point, I don't know how you feel about this, Scott, but at some point the story starts to talk back to you,
Yeah.
right? To say, no, this is what I want. This is what I want to be. This is what it needs to be to fully express, what we feel like will be a rewarding experience for our viewer, but also it's kind of become, and Ben, feel free to chime in here, but it's kind of become the vehicle for us to kind of express our worldviews and express like what we see, and kind of like a channel for what we have to say, right? The message that we believe that God's given us, that we believe we have to say. And so it's been really cool to kind of get back to sort of a much more personal expression of art to me. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I mean, I think that along with what you're saying with how it's kind of ourselves in the story where, I think the best stories, and I think we all can agree with this, are the stories that are told by people who actually are trying to say something from their own experience.
Yep.
Not, I was given this script and now I have to direct it now. It's like these people wrote this and it's a labor of love. A lot of the early Pixar films, I love them. Finding Nemo, I love Finding Nemo, where it's just all about fatherhood and about what that means and the both sides of it as a kid and as a father, and how that story kind of, as you grow with it, it grows with you, when you watch it. And honestly, I feel like those are the best stories because you can tell it was from experience. It was from something that happened in the person's life. And whether or not it's, fantasy or noir or whatever genre it is, my favorite stories are the ones that bring me into the world and help me experience what the characters are experiencing, but behind it all, it has something from my life that I'm trying to kind of put in there. And I feel like that is kind of a thing that I feel like is lost a little bit in film now, is that it's, there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and there's not enough artists with their own voices being able to make something. Or they're too worried about market stuff or whatever, and granted, even we're not worried about being successful with this story. Because honestly, it's like, in a way of like trying to be humble about it, it's like we're gonna say the thing that we feel like God is telling us to say, and we're gonna allow that to come out in the story, and we're just going to let the story tell itself, and hopefully, you know, people enjoy it and people like it, but
Yeah.
we're still going to make it anyways, just because we know we're feel called to tell the story.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've told this story multiple times on the livecast, but I'll tell it again. Yeah, I've had the same experience with my stories. Like the process of the story, of watching the story unfold, as you mentioned, you know, how the story starts speaking to you. I think one of the reasons that stories are suffering right now too is that people don't realize that you are not the master of your story. You are the slave to your story. You know, your story is telling it what it needs to be, and if you have an agenda as your thing to say, that might be tough to get through, because you're going to discover things that you may not have expected in your story.
Yeah.
And so with the process of learning, of putting out a story, that's great. Doing a Kickstarter was great. And I was in a situation where I was directing some episodes. We got over 50 million views on 5 episodes of this 7-minute cartoon I was directing at Space Station. And I thought that would feel so fulfilling to get that kind of views on work that I and the team did, right? And then at the same time, somebody came to me about Cirque de Solitude, my second Kickstarted book, and said, you know, that book describes the woman I want to be. And to me, that one comment was more valuable than 50 million views, because it was specific, you know. It was definite. Like, I could definitely see the impact it had on this young woman. And then so that's why you create because you know, that's what we're here to do.
When you're creating a connection, right? And to what I think what Ben is really hitting on is that if what you're creating has sincerity to it, if it really comes from you, it's you expect that there will be people out there that will resonate with that, right? That enough people will hopefully see that sincerity and connect with that, right? And it's just it always strikes me how interesting, you know, art creation is to just human communication and human interaction and human relationship, right? It's like, hey, we're looking to put something of ourselves in this so that when you read it, you know something of us, right?
Yeah.
And you know, in that interaction, you know, I don't know, there's some weird alchemical connection.
It's like
there,
a dialogue.
right? Yeah, exactly.
You're having a dialogue with the person experiencing the art as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like even in old paintings, it was the same thing. You know, it's like you can stand in front of some of these amazing paintings and you're having a dialogue with the painting.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
And that's the point.
And that's the process of writing a story too. Like,
right.
Part of putting you into a story, this is the other challenge, is you can't just put the pretty parts. You know?
That's right.
You can't put the Instagram polished up retouched photo, right? One story problem I have on my current project, I found the solution after seeing Angel Studios The Shift. We went to the preview of that. We were having a great discussion on the way home. Suddenly I saw a problem in my story, and I saw the solution too. And I realized why I haven't been able to solve this problem over the past few years, because it was about something negative about me that I had to face. You know?
That's very interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
It becomes a mirror, right? It becomes a mirror that you hold up to yourself, and you really kind of have to analyze that and understand what to do with it, right?
And how willing are you to be exposed, like that
exactly
that negative thing about yourself? Yeah.
So in that moment, did you tell everybody, okay, hang on, everybody be quiet. I got to remember this. Like, I finally got the solution. Write it down real quick.
I told it to my wife because we were in the car,
okay. And
I wrote it down when I got home. Yeah. But I did tell her, I was like,
hold on
the moment we get home, I'm writing those all down.
Yep.
This is important. Yep. It also made my journal too, because it was that deep. But I love to hear about your process, and I love to hear that that's the kind of work you want to do, because that's the kind of work we need.
Yeah, and it's been really cool to sort of discover, you know, the partnership even deeper, right? Like, as Ben and I kind of go into this process, just how much we're relying on each other to really kind of be the sounding board in whatever we're doing, right? So, the cool thing is kind of like what we've been talking about in terms of creative leadership and stuff like that. Is like we both get to experience both ends of that in this kind of collaboration, right? Where it's like, I'm submitting my work to Ben and being like, Ben, here's the script. Like, what do you think? You know, give me the feedback. Let's grow in this. And then he's doing the same with the artwork and the design. And it's really been really neat to kind of deepen our relationship with one another as we kind of become more and more vulnerable in that process, right? Like, we're both kind of venturing into territory that we're not extremely familiar with in terms of we don't have a ton of experience doing this, right? but it's been cool to sort of kind of venture into the unknown together and kind of see where it goes. So
Yeah,
it's just been really great.
that's wonderful. Also, we are almost at time, so we'll get to the get wiser moment that we always go through, and we've kind of covered this a little bit. But if you want to add to it, that would be, if my goal, this is the get wiser question, if my goal is to get the highest clarity of truth into a story, what approach would you recommend?
That's a deep question.
That's why I ask it over and over again.
I mean, I think for me, I think you almost kind of hit on it when you were talking about sort of analyzing yourself. I think having a standard of truth, I think for me is pivotal. First of all, as we've kind of mentioned, having a place where truth comes from and having that clearly defined for yourself, but being willing to confront it, right? Being willing to sort of look at it and say, okay, my messaging in the story or the way that I'm crafting the narrative, let me hold that up to that truth and see how it bears out, right? What am I really saying with what I'm creating, right? And constantly going back to that, right? Because I think in the process, kind of like what we were talking about, in the process of creating the narrative, it does talk back to you, right? But then you still have to have the hand of the creator to come back in and be like, yes, but I don't believe that, there are potential avenues where it ends in a place where you're like, no, that doesn't align with what I believe the truth is, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to then come back in and correct those things, right? So being willing to kind of always look at what you're making and saying, is it reflecting the truth that I want to uphold?
Okay. You want to have anything to add to that, Ben?
Could you ask the question one more time? Because I
If
feel like
my
I
goal-
want to just digest it a little bit more.
Yeah. Even to speak a bit more to your thing, Josh, one of the things I confronted when writing Masked Magic, I almost lost my faith actually while writing Masked Magic, just because of different things were going on, and there was something staring me back in Masked Magic, and I actually went with it. I decided that it felt like I needed to at least go down that path and discover what was down there, and very valuable because obviously my faith is stronger than ever, and and it was because of that process of. That's why we're here in life, right? We're actually living a story.
Yes.
And you get to determine what that's going to be. Is it going to involve animation? Are you going to be a lawyer? So it's wonderful we get to be a part of that process and just think about it. The question was, if my goal is to get the highest clarity of truth into a story, what approach would you recommend? I often use the word potency too, high potency. So the moment, like when I saw Sunset Boulevard years ago, this is, I think how I described it to Aaron Gilman, because he said, what do you mean by truth? And some of my guests will ask that question. And my example was that I saw Sunset Boulevard, sat down with my wife and said, I need to make some changes. That's what I describe as it. Like it really opened up something I had never seen before,
Yep.
I mean, I think that for me, and I feel like this is something that I've been coming back to for the past year or two now in my life overall, but also in my job, but also in my personal life, is intention. That if you don't have an intent behind it, and I think this kind of goes into what you were saying, Josh, about having the truth, and not understanding what your intent is. I mean, I see it all the time with story, where if the person who's casting the vision does not have an intent for the vision, then it's very difficult as an artist to be able to help achieve that vision. And I think vision and intent kind of go hand in hand with each other. I don't know if I'm answering the question all the way, but I just feel like it's just something that's been on my heart a lot. Has just been that kind of, and in my personal life, it's like, am I being intentional with the things that I have? And I have to clarify what that intent is, of like with my kids, what's the kind of father that I want to be to them? As a husband, what kind of husband do I want to be? As a leader at the studio, what do I want to be? And how do I want to help my people? How do I help my people get there? And what's the intent behind that? Because if I don't have a clear vision for that, then I just go in circles. And I noticed that in my life is that, and I see that in story, I mean, Josh and I's story, it's like, it's taken a while for us to find it, as far as what the story is trying to say. But
Yep.
now that we've found it, it's like everything has to go back to what the intent of the story is.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't fit with the intent of that story, then we need to throw it out because
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
Well, and it's really vogue right now to say like this story has such great themes. You know?
Yeah.
But then you watch that story and you're like, what was it saying? Like I don't. It was going like, and some people will pitch it that way, like we're saying this and this and this and this and this, and it's like, oh well, I mean, you can end up saying multiple things to multiple people in one way of saying things. Like you can just find a little 8-word quote, and it does say different things to different people in different times of their lives if it's one of those really good ones that keep being shared throughout the years, right? So yeah, having that focus. That could help all of us in our life, actually. Have a focus, have an objective, have something you're moving toward. And if you have to shift, that's okay. That's part of life. But, keep moving toward that.
It at least gives you the highest. It's like I forgot what book I read it in too.
Yeah.
There was a book that I read that was talking about like, what if you go through your entire life and the ladder's on the wrong side, on the wrong side of the building, And
yeah.
I think for me, I just feel very convicted about that in my life as a Christian is just, okay, I want to make sure that I am going in the right direction. You know? And always checking myself against the truth to make sure that my true north is still true north, because it's so easy to move away from that. And it's the same. It's crazy because when you actually apply that to the rest of your life, it's in every single aspect of life, almost like it was designed that way.
Yeah. Almost like it. Yeah.
And so it's been very eye-opening for me going through everything that I've gone through the past years and just looking back. So as well, because I see parts of my life where it's like I didn't have that vision for those things, and I was aimless for a time until I kind of reoriented myself to what I needed to reorient to. So obviously that's my faith. So that ultimately deep down. So. But it applies to everything.
Yeah,
so I don't
know
know if that answered the question, but that's my answer to that kind of. So.
Yeah, have an objective. Make it the highest ideal you can imagine, or that you can conceive of.
It's different than goals. It's different than goals.
It is different.
Like that's the thing. It's
an ideal.
I was
it's
super into self-help books. Before I was a Christian, and I feel like it changed. And it's not about setting goals for your life, because the goals lead out of that intent, if that makes sense. Like where you need to go, it'll tell you the steps once you know where you're trying to go, and I feel like the goals to me are like the steps that you need to take to get there. I don't know if it's making sense, but
it's making sense. Also, there's an aspect of if you're into self-help and stuff like that, there's an aspect where they do explore this idea that goals actually can be detrimental if that's all you're looking at is the goal and not just the process, right? And perhaps an ideal that you're looking toward, in your case would be Christianity, right? And that faith that you have, that would be the process plus the goals, right? It's like combined. It's not just goals. It's not just process. It's both.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm speaking for you.
Sense, but
yeah.
But
well, awesome. Well, it was so great to have you on the show. I have links to your DeviantArt, Josh, and your Instagram down in the show notes. And if there are any other links that you want them to go to, let me know. And
don't judge me. I haven't updated that thing in 4 years. So yeah.
Yeah. And check out our upcoming work. It's really exciting. We have a lot of production diaries out that you can check out. And that shows you the stuff that you can know now, but there's lots coming soon. So look forward to that. And until next time, what?
No, I was just going to say, we appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you. It's been great.
Oh, yeah. Such a pleasure. Thank you. And until next time, I hope we all get a little wiser. Thank you for watching the Directing Animation Livecast, hosted by Scott Weiser. Audio version edited by Kira Horowitz. Copyright Scott Weiser, LLC 2023. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and ring that notification bell.